same kinds of books, you know, because he brought books with him. And so, if you think about it, he came up with the exact same idea as Darwin. That's why I said earlier, it doesn't matter what Darwin said, because somebody else would have figured it out. Darwin's not important, it's his idea that's important. And his idea was not evolution, his idea was how evolution can happen. Other people have been talking about evolution. It was how it happens, and his idea was natural selection. But Wallace had the exact same idea. So the idea was already out there that the earth was old and it was changing. The idea was already out there that species change. The idea was already out there that not everything's going to survive and that there's competition among organisms. The only thing they did was they both connected the dots and said, hey, that's why animals are changing too. That's what they came up with. Are you good? You good? Or if you want to say it in a fancier way, they both figured out that differential reproductive success can change a species. Good? So Darwin and Wallace, they have similar background. They both traveled to islands, new island chain. They both saw new species. They both saw that their species would be similar from island to island, but only found on that island. And they both saw that all these similar, closely related species on these islands, the closest thing they were related to, other than each other, was one on the mainland. Kind of like some of the birds are trying to fly and they get caught in a storm and get blown over the islands and they spread over the islands and they slightly different conditions, they all changed. All right? So they all said, hey, they both said, hey, these could have descended from one older species that's on the mainland. Their new idea is what we call natural selection. It's selection that happens in the wild. This is a very different mechanism than what Lamarck said. Okay? Very different mechanism. We now use the E word, the scary evolution word, for what they used to call descent with modification. Their breakthrough was not there is descent with modification. Their breakthrough was this is how it happens. Good? If you get nothing else in this class, I want you to know that natural selection was the breakthrough. Natural selection was the new idea. It wasn't evolution. Okay? So Darwin and Wallace, they both looked at new species. It said that, yeah, it said all that. Darwin, he's famous for the tortoises and the finches that he found in the Galapagos. Wallace for frogs, for beetles, for birds, all kinds of stuff that he found in Indonesia, in Java, in Sumatra, in that whole chain of islands. Good? And oh, there, I missed it. I almost missed it. This is awesome. We're about to play another video.
Control its descent. It glides as far forward as the distance it falls.
Which for an amphibian is a big deal. Okay, so that's what Wallace discovered. One of the many things. Like they said, he discovered several thousand species of bugs. But there's something more interesting because frog, you know. All right. So Darwin and Wallace discovered new species. Darwin discovered these finches, including vampire finches that suck blood. That's pretty cool, right?
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, vampire finches. He found vampire finches. You know, my nephew's 5. He's just about old enough to start playing t-ball. You guys ever watch a kid play t-ball? You know how this works. If the kid, he lines up and the coach just swing, and he'll swing low and he'll hit the tee and knock it over and the ball's like barely rolling forward. And the kid looks like, what? And the coach is like, run, run, run! And the kid, he runs around the bases. He runs around the bases, just work with me. And the coach says, slide, slide, slide. And the kid doesn't know how to slide, so what's he do? Fall, fall, fall. And then the coach picks him up and he dusts him off and run, run. And the kid goes and he sucked. But they all sucked and they lost. And it's okay because you all did a good job and now we all get to go get ice cream. All right? That's t-ball. It's not the way it works in Major League Baseball. If you suck, are you going to stay on the team?
No.
If you suck, are you going to get the Major League Baseball paycheck? All right. Biology is exactly the same except that if you suck, you don't have sex, and you might get eaten. Okay, it's even worse. I'm just saying.
That's even worse.
Well, it is, okay? If you do a bad job, the other guy gets the mace. If you do a really bad job, the predator finds you and you die, right? So what do you need to survive to win in biology? There's variation that exists, there's competition, and you need to pass on your genes at the end of the day. The way we keep score in biology is the number of kids. The one that leaves the most kids wins. That's just the way it is. Good? Because that means the next generation will have more of your genes, not that other one that didn't get to breed. Good? The whole point, evolution is a change in a population. You have to pass on your genes to affect the population. If you don't matter. You could be the fastest kid there, but it's like you're not going around the bases. It's like you ran off into the outfield.
Or the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, like I did?
No, I was saying, or the kid runs the wrong way.
Okay, yeah, exactly. All right. So, mutations make genetic variation. Mutation is the source of all of variation. What you're doing is making new alleles. Good? Good. So variation exists. It has to be variation that can be inherited. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. Mutations alone, yeah. Mutations that could be passed on to kids, that could cause evolution. Are we good? Now, what do organisms compete for? Food, water, territory, mates. Those are things they compete for, right? Resources, mates. If you don't have those things, you can't pass on your genes. I know you're going to say, oh, but asexual reproduction, yeah, you're right, but you still need food and water and territory. These are the things you're competing for. If you don't have them, you don't pass on your genes. If you don't pass on your genes, you lose. It's very simple. Let's talk about the difference in what Lamarck said and what Darwin said. Remember, Lamarck said, we stretch and we try to eat off the trees, and so we're going to be tall. And then we'll pass on those genes to our kids, and they'll be tall. That was Lamarck's idea. That's not what we see. What we see is Darwin's idea. There's variation. There are some short giraffes and some tall giraffes and some kind of tall giraffes. And the tall ones and the kind of tall ones, they get to eat. And the short one, well, you see the vultures there, and you see the carcass here, you kind of get the idea. They starve to death, and something else eats them. And so the only ones that are left to pass on their genes are tall and kind of tall, and so in the next generation, they're all tall, because the short genes, they don't matter, because they weren't passed on, because you starved to death. Am I right? Pretty simple. Shouldn't be controversial. That is what evolution is. Evolution, descent with modification, is a change in the genes of the population. Would you agree that in this generation, the genes in this population are different than in this generation? Here, there's more variety. Here, the ones that weren't good at eating off the tall trees were taken out of the population. It is what it is. All right. So natural selection is what causes populations to change over time. This generation will be different than the last one. The change in the population is what we call evolution. Natural selection will adapt the population to its environment. This is not random. Everybody gets that wrong. How could random evolution cause? Well, evolution is not random. The mutations that make the variations are random. All right, so would you agree? This is the picture right out of your book. Here we have the original population of pronghorn antelope. Here we have the mountain lion and cougar. It's trying to find dinner. Guess what? The fast ones get away. The slow ones don't. The slow ones get eaten. Do we agree? Do we agree? All right. And guess what? The one that got eaten, it didn't have babies. So the characteristics that help you survive and breed will become more common in the population. This generation, they'll be a little faster. Now he's going to have to become a little faster. You see this kind of thing happening in nature a lot. There's a video that I'll use it later. I'll just tell you about it now. It's about an animal called the rough-skinned newt. It has a bright orange belly. It's a warning coloration. Stay away from me, I'm poisonous. There's a snake, a garter snake, that eats it. So they're in this arms race. The newt gets more poisonous, the snake gets better at resisting the poison. You know how strong that poison has gotten? It'll kill a human. It's for protection against a little garter snake. It can kill a human. Anyway. All right, so natural selection is so not random. Remember, the quote we used earlier was the non-random survival of random variants. The variations that you get due to mutation are random. But who lives, that is so not random. If you're slow, if you have a bad sense of smell, a bad sense of hearing, if you don't know the predator's there and you can't get away from it, you die. There's nothing random about that, right? The fit one is the one that's going to make it. So mutations are random. They could be good, they could be bad. They create new alleles, new variations of the genes, and natural selection will choose from them. Just like the branches on the topiary go this way, that way, that way, that way. And the guy comes along and like, no. Oh, yeah, that's a good branch. No. Does that make sense? That's what's happening here. So natural selection, characteristics that help you survive and breed will become more common in the population. Then the population will turn into faster pronghorn. Good? All right, this is how we've made lots and lots of species. Lots of organisms are very good at what they do. And some people say, oh, they were created, they fit the environment perfectly. Not necessarily due to creation, it's due to survival and breeding. What I wanted you to understand is that when you have this, suppose we have a whole population of frogs here, different sizes, and say the big ones are too big to fit in the snake's mouth, the little ones are small enough they can fit in cracks so the snake can't get. Who's going to get eaten?
Medium-sized.
The medium-sized ones are going to get eaten. So over time, you will have less of the medium and more of each of the two extremes. If this happens enough, you might end up having two entirely separate groups. That's what we're talking about. There are three types of selection. Hey, it's in red there. What's it say and what's it mean?
On the test.
It is on the test. It is so on the test. So, here we have mice with fur color, ranging from really light color to really dark color. This is our original population. And so here we have the original population. Suppose we put them in an environment where all the light colored ones stuck out like sore thumbs. They're really obvious and the birds say, oh, I can eat that. What's going to happen to the population over time? Well, the white ones are going to be less common. You're going to shift the whole thing over in one direction where the average, instead of the average being here, the average will be a little bit darker because the light ones were getting eaten. Does that make sense? We call this directional selection. If you put them in a background that was different, where it was a very dark background, and, a very light background, the dark ones stuck out, then you have directional selection shifting the population that way. It's moving the average in one direction, so we call it directional selection. Does that make sense? Because remember, evolution is a change in the population, it's not a change in the individual. Okay. Here we have disruptive selection. Some books also call it diversifying selection. You probably guessed since I added diversifying, see how the font doesn't match, size doesn't match, all that I care about it. I want you to know it both ways. This is the way I learned it, that's why. Diversifying selection, you do what we saw on the last slide. You select the ones in the middle, the others survive. And so the ones that were the average become less common, and you form two new populations. Good? It's diversity, because diversity, look at the many types of this and that we have. Well, now you've got two types of mice that are more common. That's what we call diversifying. Okay, stabilizing selection, you keep the average where it is. That's why it's called stabilizing. That doesn't mean nothing changes. What changes is that you have less of the really light and really dark. Average stays where it is, but more of them are at that average. So the peak becomes narrower and taller because there are more things on the average. Does that make sense? Okay, easy enough. You will see one of those pictures, at least maybe all three of them on the test. So be able to see a picture and know what it is. Can't be more obvious than that, can you? All right, so natural selection. I said this about 250 million times already. It is not random. There are mutations, which are kind of random. Not truly random, like you tend to put a T where there's an A if you screw up. But mutations create variations in the organisms, and those variations have nothing to do with whether they're good for the organism or bad for the organism. Does that make sense? Then you have natural selection. Hey, this variation, it makes a really good mouse to blend in with the background. This one doesn't. Oh, wait, you die. Make sense? Make sense? All right, so why do organisms look like they fit their environment so dang well? Because they do. If they didn't, they would get eaten. They don't get to pass on their genes. So here again is the phrase from the jerk, who actually is a good biologist, just a bad human being. The non-random survival of random variations. The natural selection causes things to adapt to their environment. When I say causes things to adapt, I don't mean the individuals, I mean the population, because individuals don't change, right? Okay, so this could be directional, but whatever it is, it's always non-random. It alters the population not an individual. Over time, the organisms get better at their job. Why is this happening? Because the losers don't get to pass on their genes to the next generation. We're all down with that, right? This is important. It works on the phenotypes. I should have put this in red. It doesn't work on the genotypes. Yes, I keep talking about what genes you pass on to the next generation. But here's the thing. Suppose that you are an antelope and you have a gene that makes you, that could make you really fast. But it's a recessive gene and you only have one copy of it. Are you going to be faster than all the other antelope? No. You might get eaten even though you have the fast gene. Because the lion will not see you as any faster than the other one, any harder to catch. What the lion cares about when it's looking for food is the phenotype. How good you are at hearing him, how good you are at smelling him, how good you are at running away, right? So the selection actually works on the phenotype. But the phenotype, of course, is controlled by what genes get passed on. If you're better at your lifestyle, you pass on more genes, you'll probably have more kids in the next generation. Why do you do that? Because the traits you have are adaptive, things that help you work well in the environment. So that's why a population becomes adapted to its environment. It changes over time, many generations, until it's really good at doing its job. Now, the problem is if you get too specialized, and then the environment changes, it gets drier, it gets colder, and there's glaciers, and all, you might be too specialized to change. And then you die. I'm really good at this lifestyle, but it doesn't matter. It's kind of like, I have a friend in a car club who's a really, really good programmer in COBOL. Another job, because there aren't that many COBOL jobs left. If you're really good at living in this environment and the environment changes, you could die. Does that make sense? Yeah, so specialization bad, generalists survive. All right, so reminder, populations are what evolved, not individuals, right? Evolution is a change in the alleles of a population, right? A change in the genetic makeup of a population. All the genes in a population, here's your nerd word, are the gene pool. And some things deserve to be removed from the gene pool. So here we have, you remember we had that slide with the mice before? We've actually seen that. We've actually done that experiment. Here we have barrier island sand. It's kind of light colored. And you have a bunch of light colored mice on here, and occasionally there's a dark one. But what happens to the dark one? Yes, the hawk comes and eats it. And over here on the mainland, where it's not sandy, where it's rotting tree leaves and stuff making up the dirt's much darker. And so dark colored mice do really well there. What happens to the occasional light colored mouse like that one or that one? The hawk. Yep, the hawk comes and eats them. Now, this is one of those things like, okay, that's a nice story. But it's not just a story, because they made a prediction, which is just what we said. Oh, I bet that's why we have the light colored mice on the light colored sand. I bet that's why we have the dark colored mice on the dark colored mainland dirt. So what happened? A researcher went and he caught a bunch of mice in all different shades of brown. And I still want to make a 50 Shades of Grey joke there. But anyway, he caught a whole bunch of mice in all different shades of brown. And he put them in 2 enclosures with different with sand on the bottom in one and dark colored dirt in the bottom in the other. And then he put hungry owls in with them. And you probably can guess what happened. If you look at the number that were attacked, the light beach mice got attacked more often than the dark ones on the dark dirt. Are we shocked?
No.
Okay. And here, look at this. The dark ones got attacked more often on the light sand. Again, are we shocked? No. I know a bunch of people are like, man, whatever. But it's not a man, whatever. A lot of people say, oh, there's no evidence of evolution. There's no evidence of natural selection. What's the definition of evolution? Come on, to the last.
Changing the alleles in the population.
Yes. Did we change the alleles in the population?
Yes.
Did we change the alleles in the population? Yes. We can make predictions and we can see it happen. So let's talk about what Darwin did. Chuck went to an island, a bunch of islands, went to the Galapagos. He saw a bunch of species there. They were similar to ones on the mainland, like the turtles. Well, they weren't turtles, they were tortoises. But like the tortoises, like the finches that he foolishly thought were grosbeaks, not finches. But he saw these things and he said, hey, all of these different things could have come from this related species on the mainland, come from one common ancestor, and then when they get blown to the island, the ones on this island, they change a little bit, so they're a little different than this one. Yeah, like this island, they specialized on eating really big seeds, they have really big beaks, and on this island they specialized on pecking holes in other birds and lapping up their blood, or whatever. And it causes their beaks to be different. And you would agree, these sharp-beaked groundfinch has a sharp beak for a reason, and it's not for cracking big seeds. And it worked. It's a plausible explanation. We see the birds doing this. That explanation is what Darwin's breakthrough was. It was not the idea of evolution. It was an explanation how it might happen. His breakthrough was the idea of natural selection. Now, who else had that idea?
Watkins or something like that.
Wallace. Alfred Russel Wallace. He's the dude. Yep, Alfred Russel Wallace had that idea. All right, hey, just to be my version of the slide. Here we have all the different species descended from a common ancestor, including our favoriteest one. Yeah, it drinks blood. But you get the idea. My second favorite one, of course, would be the woodpecker finch, because any animal that's a tool user that goes spearfishing for bugs, that's pretty cool. All right. Anyway, Daphne major, it's an island. Okay. This is Daphne major before there was a drought, and this is Daphne major after the drought. And you can probably see there's a whole pile of dead stuff, right? Nobody's surprised by that, right? The surprising part would be what comes after that if I get the right Hank Green video.
So here's a little biological love story for all you romantics out there. Peter and Rosemary Grant, two British evolutionary biologists, they are in fact a married couple, have since the early 1970s been spending 6 months of each year together on a secluded island in the Galapagos, studying Darwin's finches, trying to catch them in the act of evolving. So that, my friends, is both super romantic and also an excellent example of super quick St. Patrick's speciation in action. Okay?
That's okay. I've been bitten. Ow, he has teeth. Ow, ow,